This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here, and you're on the Whole Horse Podcast. Today on the podcast, I have a guest that I've been wanting to chat with and pick his brain for a while now, and I'm very excited to have him here. He's coming from a ways away. He was just in Canada. We have Kenneth Vansweevelt.
Yeah, there you go.
I did okay. Here on the podcast today, and he was just here in the Cowichan about a week ago, as well as teaching on Salt Spring Island with Heather Nelson. And I've gone out and had a chance to listen in a little bit to some of his clinics. I consistently, Murphy's Law, have school on the weekends. He is here, so I've missed out in terms of taking Diva, but I'm so excited to do so in the future. Very excited to have you here, Kenneth. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for inviting me.
You are welcome. I would love, Kenneth, if you could just share a little bit. I mean, I know it's been probably quite a journey with horses, but just sharing where you've come from, where you are now, what your focus is at this time. I'm sure it's shifted over time, but yeah. Just a little bit about your journey.
Good. So, well, actually, the good thing is I always grown up with horses. So from when I was a child, my mother had horses. And therefore, since I was 5, I was climbing on a horse. But the good thing for me was I was always taught how to learn to ride by myself. So I think that is already one of my biggest advantages, is that I never took real classes. So it was just a natural thing. I climb up a horse and I will fall off again. And then I will just try it again. So it's a lot of fail and error. So I have actually quite a luxury to never have followed traditional lessons. So I have never really been used to force horses. I always kept my fun. I always just enjoyed, and I just did whatever I felt was right. And therefore I went just for many years for trail riding with horses. Mm-hmm. So that was actually my biggest part until I was 18. I was even guiding trail rides. Even I was between, I think, 14 and 16, I was doing the guiding of them. And then when I was around my 14, I think I bought my horse trainer, the gray one you will find on my Facebook profile. And actually at the moment when I bought him, I was already in the hospital before I bought him even. So I need to have some surgery at my hand and things like that. So I was not really willing to have that horse anymore.
Right.
But my mother was really like, this is the horse we're going to get. This is a good horse. But he was crazy. So I was not really happy to have him. But of course, when he enters your field, I'm very happy to have him, even though I wasn't able to do something as well. So then the journey started. So then the real journey started. So then I went always out for trail rides with him too. The good thing was, because I was always grown up in nature with them, is that I had a very good seat by myself and a very good balance on horses.
Yeah.
And he was making a lot of jumps with all his 4 legs on the ground, from the ground and things like that. But there was never a real problem because I was just able to follow. So, what's the problem?
Yeah.
And I also always felt that he was never dangerous to me. He was afraid of something, but not for me. So I know that everything he did, he never wanted to harm me.
Yeah.
So he wanted to hurt me. So therefore, I always kept my trust. But there came days that he started to fall on the ground together with me.
Wow.
So that's the point. I got a very big injury. So then I needed to go to hospital again. I had some surgeries at my shoulder, and I have some problems with my hips and so on. And then we needed to decide, after 2.5 years of rehabilitation for myself, I needed to decide something to change in his in our way of communication and in the way how he's educated. So then we started our journey. So we went to many different places, like from people who are used to work with Spanish horses. We have to traditional riding, to jumping riding, and actually no one was really able to help me. So they all said, well, this is just a horse you need to bring to slaughter because it's not worth something. And it's dangerous. And so then I went home again after several months, and then I went to university. And as I love my horse, I take my horse with me to university. So I just took my horse with me to university, and actually then I discovered someone who was living in my neighborhood who was sharing a very lovely video. And I was really like, oh my God, that's it. I really love the atmosphere with the horse. I really like how they were interacting with each other. And so I was just falling in love with the things she was doing. So I did send her a message, and I asked her like, well, hello, what are you doing with your horses? I'm very interested to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then she told me that she was actually working in the academic art of riding. And even though I know at the time the trainer I was with, he was like, what she is doing, she's crazy. She's ruining her horse. She has a perfect horse, but she's ruining her horse. And I was sitting next to him, and I was like, that's really what I want to have. So I was really into it. Yeah. So I was just ignoring him. And then, of course, because I did spend a lot of money on all the other educations, and I was going to university, I did not really have so much chance anymore to get education. So therefore, I started, first of all, with lots of reading online.
Yes.
And then at the moment when I started to do all these readings and starting to practice it on my horse and just starting to experiment with it, my horse started to change. And then the people where I was, when I was stabling with my horses, the people saw the change in him. And then before I was actually able to take lessons, people asked me for lessons because they saw the change in my horse. I was never promoting myself as an instructor because I was not having any goals to be a horse teacher. So therefore, because they were starting to follow lessons with me, I was getting money. And because I was having some money, I could start to educate myself too. So then the time started that I was starting to get able to follow lessons with one of the licensed trainers from Vansweevelt. And then my journey went really quick. So my horse was developing very well. And after half a year, I was able to join with my horse one of the band clinics. So Ben Vanderup is a big master in the academic art of riding. And then when I went to his clinic, I decided to write myself in as an internship at his place. So that's how everything started to roll. And then I went traveling with my horses to Denmark, going to Ben's place, having my internship, having my intensive education with him. And then after my intensive education there, I decided it wasn't long enough yet. I wanted to get a little longer away from home, even though I left all my pupils at home. And then I went still traveling further towards Sweden with my horses to Hanna Engström. She's also one of the trainers in the academic art of riding. And that was for me a very wonderful time because first of all, I came there as a working student. That was the goal. But then she discovered that I had good education skills for horses. So my job became educating the horses of her. Around 20 horses. So the nice thing was I was able to train them every single day around 12 horses. And
oh my goodness.
Yes. So, and the good thing was it were horses from all kind of levels, like really beginner horses until very advanced horses doing all the high school exercises. And so that was a real big opportunity for me. So that gave me so much time to get all my insights from Ben's place to discuss with on all these horses. And then I still had my own 2 horses with me. It was really, really great because then I could really focus on my own education.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then I went back home again. very sad, but I felt I needed to go home again because I needed to develop my business. And of course, I did quit my studies.
Yeah.
So I was actually studying engineering architecture.
Yep.
And people always ask me, but this is a very big change comparing to horses. And I'm like, no, this is the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the engineering gives you the insights of how the body is working. Of course, it was not for bodies at that time, it was for buildings, but it gives you an insight of how things work.
Yes.
And the architecture gives you the art.
Mm.
As far as I remember, when I looked to the name academic art of riding, academic means theory, insights, being able to see the biomechanic of a horse, being able to understand the psychology of a horse. What was also something important for the art and for the philosophy we got in all our lessons in the university.
Yeah.
And of course, the goal is to create art. So, and I was drawing art. I was feeling into things. And the nice thing was even that working with horses really brought me a lot of things during my studies and the opposite way around. So for me, it was really combining everything together and it was really making my picture bigger.
Yeah.
By training horses, I started to understand my studies more, how science is connected to art and how art is connected to science. Because when there is a contradiction between both, for me, it's a contradiction. It's not possible.
Yeah.
If the horse is not moving in its biomechanics, how can it become art?
Absolutely.
So that was my journey, I think. So yeah, that was my biggest learning.
Yeah, well, I know you've gone back to Bent's, and Heather come over, and I think there's been you definitely have progressed in that work more and more. So that's awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so now I'm of course traveling a lot with my own horses also to be educated still, because that's always important.
Yeah.
And of course, one of my main goals is also just to help the world to grow, because there are still so many people that need to be developed, and there is still such a lack of knowledge. So that is one of my passions now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Kenneth has been coming here to the west coast of Canada to share this work, the art of, the academic art of riding. And it's sort of like a first around here in a way, this particular work. So, and I know that it's just been really taking off, and it's beautiful to see the horses that are working in this way, and how, sound they're becoming and healthy and happy. And I love learning about it because I, as a body worker, equine body worker, I see so much positivity and positive shifts in those horses, in terms of what they're able to do, just with this work alone. So thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Normally it should need to work always hand by hand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, I think it's like, for me, it's really the next step. I come from a community where a lot of people went through like the traditional, and many people kind of got on the natural horsemanship train. And now, it's like there's this, they've been waiting for this next thing.
Yes.
And I really strongly believe that this is a big part of it.
Yes, because it is like, it was a good shift to go from traditional to natural horsemanship. And I think for us, the academic art of riding is something in between both worlds, because both worlds have a certain quality. Like the traditional world, they are trying to train the body of the horse. I do not say that they are doing a good job, but let's say their goal is to get a good movement in the body and so on. The horsemanship tries to get a good mind into the horses. But for me, it's so important that you can't have a good moving body without having a good mind. Yeah. And you can't have a good mind with a bad moving body. Absolutely. So that is for me often a little bit problem is with the horsemanship is to have a very good horsemanship, you must have basic understandings of what the biomechanic of a horse does. And that is for me sometimes a little bit sad to see still, is that there are many people doing the horsemanship against the nature of the horse. Yeah. So it's not only the psychology of the horse, because if it goes against nature, it's just impossible to go against the body of the horse. So we need to make sure that everything we do with the horse is growing the body, is helping it to develop the body. And of course, the mind must be the access to the body. But if you ruin the body by accessing the mind, how much are you accessing the mind?
Absolutely.
So that is something I like to add into it, is that people, yes, they start to get more and more horsemanship. But now the next step is to also understand the biomechanics of it, to see what is good horsemanship and what is bad horsemanship.
Yes. Yeah. Because you do start to see horses, within both of those worlds breaking down early, right? And or not only that, but getting sour to it, going, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And it makes sense with, there's pain, there's perhaps boredom, there's, a sense of helplessness around it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the strangest thing is that the people really train the helplessness.
Yeah.
Like, often they use that the horse needs to move a lot and things like that, but actually people are just so afraid of horses. I think 90% of the people are just afraid of horses.
Yeah.
My goal is, at the moment when I bring my horse into the arena, that I can have his full spirit. So therefore, I will never have my horse just running around to get it tired before I'm able to work it, because then I do not have the full spirit of my horse anymore.
Yeah.
And I think having a piaffe with a horse with a full spirit, with the full power he has in his body, I think that is the most beautiful thing to dream of. That is the thing. People, first of all, break down the spirits because they are afraid of horses.
Yep.
And then they do create something like a horse that is helplessness. And then they try to add exercises into it again.
Yeah.
The exercise can never look as beautiful when the spirit is not in the body anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think that is really something what I try to go for, is you need to bring your horse into the arena with his full spirit, and you must try to explain that he can use all his energy for you, not against you.
Yeah.
Of course, often a lot of horses are using their spirit against the people, but that's not a problem of the horse, it's a problem of the education.
Yeah.
We need to educate our horse to bring the full spirit and to let it work for you. And that is what you really need to aim for, is to have the full spirit of your horse. When I like to return my horse back into the pasture, in between the herd, I need to see that my horse became more proud.
Yes.
And my horse needs to become more proud in the herd and needs to function better in the herd. But often we discover that, for example, the dressage horses, they need to be put in a stable because they will harm themselves.
Yep.
And the natural horsemanship horses, they're just getting sometimes a little bit dead in their mind too.
Yeah.
And for me, it's so important that who can actually judge what a good horse is? I think people are not able to judge it, even though there are judges in the dressage. But the point is, how well do they understand what a horse needs to be?
Yeah.
So nowadays we are going so far away from what a horse is. The only judge can be the horses themselves. And for me, it's very fascinating to see, when I look to my herd, what is really obvious is that all the horses that I am training primary, those are all the horses who stand on top of all my herd.
I was going to say.
Yeah. And all the horses that are not trained as well, they are always somewhere below at the bottom.
Yep.
So that is for me very fascinating to see. Then I'm like, is it an accident or is it not an accident? But all my horses are leading into my herd.
Wow.
So it's really, really nice to see. So my goal is to have a horse becoming more a horse. That must be the goal of the education.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I've seen that before where, like people telling me the horse that they ride the most is the proudest and the strongest within the herd. They become more so, more of themselves. And I'm like, you're doing a good job.
Yes, then you're doing a good job. Yeah. Yeah, totally is.
Absolutely.
So, that's
beautiful.
really important.
And one of the things I've noticed, Kenneth, is, here I'm going to call it a myth that horses by the time they're 20 are retirable. They're no longer useful. That's very common in Canada, even like 18. my mare is 20 this year. She looks the best that she's looked.
Yeah.
You know, to ride her, she's a dream. I ride her bareback. I've been working on a neck rope. She's so soft. She's so supple. I went away for 2 months. I came back. She's like, just, you know, like probably like your horses when you leave and come back. It's like, it's all there. The fitness maybe needs a little bit of work, but everything's there. So sharing a little bit about, because I've seen this with like more classical training and academic art of riding training, where people are keeping their horses going. Like, you know, I think Belinda was sharing, who's a mutual acquaintance friend of mine and Kenneth, that she had a horse that was 40 and still going in this work and still, you know what I mean? So which is so cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. So often, of course, like you said, horses are retired at the age of 15 and 16 even in Europe. And then I'm wondering, like, when you do a full education in your horse, a horse can only be complete educated at the age of 16 earliest. And then you must know we are talking about masters. We are not talking about ourselves. So how can we educate the horse earlier than the age of 16 until all the high exercises? It's impossible. But even though when you look towards a lot of competition, all the horses are making very early in their education all these fancy moves. It can't be done in a proper way. You can make fancy exercises without having a good biomechanics. So therefore, often people actually do not take care of the biomechanics of a horse. Because if you, for example, like to collect your horses, but you're not aware about the way how the pressure goes into all the joints of the hind leg, if the joints of the hind legs are not used in the proper way, the way how they should move, like when they take a little sideways step, and you will then start to bend hunches, you will get complete wrong pressures in the joints. And of course, then you will start to ruin your horse. So people are really not aware about what a healthy movement is. So when you become aware about the healthy movement, well, the older your horse gets, the better he will get into shape. So, and as far as I also believe is all the horses that you will put on retirement, I think when you stop moving, when you stop training, that's the moment you will start to die. So you should actually train your horse how to become a healthy old horse and keep on training it until it is actually, well, it is having its last day. Because the moment when you stop training your horse, it's the moment that you tell the horse, okay, now you're ready to go. Because also people, you need to keep moving to get a healthy body. And your body is your house to live in. So we must actually get a very good training into it. And maybe also one of the gifts in the academic art of riding is that you do not, at a certain age, maybe it's impossible to ride your horse. It can be. But then there are still many other possibilities to train your horses in. Like you have the hand work, you have the lunging, you have good ground work, you have long reining. You have so many opportunities to keep your horse's body healthy. But people often only think about the fact when you can't ride it, it's done. But you have a responsibility towards your horse to keep it healthy, to give it a good life. And therefore you can still train it on the ground. You can keep it healthy and strong and maybe stronger than ever. So therefore there are still so many opportunities, even if you can't ride a horse, and it's your responsibility to keep your horse as healthy as possible. So I think also my strongest belief is never stop training your horse as long as he can stand on his 4 legs.
Well, and what I notice is it can be so, like I did 10 minutes with Diva this morning. You know, it was so short on the ground. I brushed her and we just did a little bit, you know, and it helps her to really find her balance in her body. And she's not really built as such for riding. She's very long in the back. So these sorts of things to keep her strong. And so she's not going to, you know, lose her tonicity through her spine and, you know, get that anterior pelvic tilt and all those things going on. It helps for, you know, her abdominals to be working, her foot, you know, her hind quarter to come through and her ribs to be moving. That, you know, lymphatically is so powerful. And I'd love to get into this in a second, but that like I see that with her. It's like, it doesn't take much to
No,
do
no,
something,
people even often train their horses like an hour and sometimes even longer, because an hour is just the training and then they still need to cool it down. But that's really nonsense. Because first of all, when you are educating your horse, you are working with the mind and the spirit. And the question is, how long can you keep the mind and the spirit in your training? How long is an hour? Because at the moment when also the spirit of your horse is starting to leave the body, so I actually mean when the body is getting tired, you can't reach the mind anymore. And if you can't reach the mind, what makes it any sense to work with your horse?
Exactly.
So therefore the trainings are often very short in the way how we train the horses, because it must be a good training. It is not only about quantity, it's also about quality of a training. So therefore you don't need lots of time, and that's sometimes also the good thing when you do not have so much time.
So great, right? Yeah, for sure.
It is really great. Yeah, it's better to do 10 minutes of good work than to do an hour of bad work, because then at least you train good muscles instead of bad muscles for an hour.
Yeah, well, and I think of an hour of training and the impact of that on a horse who potentially doesn't have the muscles or the strength to support their spine, or their joints. We could probably get into a whole other conversation about starting horses too young in that regard. But that's wear on those areas that they don't need.
No, and also often then I see like people who are doing a lot of piaffe work in their training. And then after their training, they give loose reins, what is of course pretty nice of the trainer. But then I see that when they give the reins forward, that the horse suddenly starts to become very long in the body. Like the hind legs are getting behind the hips. The head is getting a very long shape, longer than actually the biomechanic should allow to have a healthy moving horse. And then I'm wondering, they trained the horse that it was getting so tired of using their stomach muscles, lifting up the withers.
Yeah.
Therefore, if you get those muscles so tired, then you actually start to harm the muscles instead of developing them. So you need to know what good training is. Good training is not training as far that the horse gets tired, because you need to see the result at the end. Your horse needs to move better at the end of the training, not worse. Therefore, sometimes when you make your training too hard for the horse, then you're actually ruining the horse, because the horse's muscles can't recover anymore.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and again, I'll feel this sometimes when I feel, a horse's back, and it's like it's so hard and it's so rigid. There's like this, they've had to go into a brace to just protect their spine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I do agree.
Yeah. And how do you ride that, and how do you work with that? And what kind of pain are they actually experiencing every time you do try to do those things, Yeah.
And then I'm always, now I'm just reflecting myself to the fact that people, so often people actually try to protect themselves. And when they are riding, for example, when I heard your question, I was just getting something popped up in my brain. Like people often use stirrups with the training of their horses. And I do not say that stirrups are a bad thing, but the reason why often people use their stirrups, I find it so much outcrying. Because to keep the balance of the rider, they often use the downwards pressure in the heel so that they can feather more with their legs. But then I'm starting to wonder, okay, first of all, if you press down your heels at both sides of your stirrups, you put pressure on the front side of your saddle.
Right.
As far as I believe is, if you put pressure on the front side of your saddle, you press the saddle down into the withers, and you press the withers down into the shoulder blades. So my first thing is, okay, so when you put too much pressure into the stirrups, you're wounding your horse. You are creating a horse to pull a coach instead of creating a horse to become a riding horse. That's my first thing. But then there is even something else, because they use the downwards pressure in the heels for the feathering in their body, so that they can actually feather out the movement of the horse.
Right.
But if I'm wondering, a good riding horse is a horse that must be ridden from the hind legs. And if we look towards the biomechanics of a hind leg, we can see that the hind legs are having this feathering function. the front legs do not have as much feathering function.
No.
So therefore, at the moment when a rider needs to have feathering himself, it means that the horse is moving in a bad shape, because then the horse is falling on the front legs. And of course, when a horse is ridden on the front legs, it has no feathering.
It's
like
pistons.
Yes, it is like when you would jump into the air with stuck knees, and you will get down into the ground, you will feel the shock into your back.
Totally.
If you get with your knees, it is absorbing the shock. So therefore, if people need to have these downwards heels to stay on their horses, and if they need to keep the rising trot instead of the seated trot, then I'm like, you're educating your horse wrong, because if the movement is uncomfortable to you, the movement must be uncomfortable for the horse too, because that's just the law of Newton. So that was something that popped up in my brain when we were talking about, I don't know what anymore.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I have so many things I want to ask you about all of that. Shortly, I want to get into rider stuff, because I know that's like a huge part of this conversation. But before we do that, I want to talk to you, or I want to pick your brain about the ribs. This is a space that I know, even coming and sitting in just for a little bit in your clinic, I was like, oh, and really I see it all the time in my clients where their rib cage is either sheared to one side or totally rigid. It's just immovable. And this sense of the importance of this swinging of the rib cage. I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, so I think this is also one of the biggest differences between academic art of riding and all the other kind of trainings. Also, also classical dressage and so on, is that we do work a lot with the ribcage rotation. So the ribcage rotation is for us important because it's the only possibility to get the shoulder lifted. So at the moment when a shoulder needs to get lifted, because that's our goal, is to have a horse ridden from the hind leg, and when a horse is ridden from the hind leg, the shoulder must be lifted. But for example, the outside shoulder can only be lifted when the inside hip is dropped.
Yep.
So at the moment when the inside hip is not dropping, it can't be that the outside shoulder is lifted, because this diagonal movement in the horse is just working together. So if the horse needs to drop the inside hip to get the outside shoulder lifted, well, the hips are connected to the spine by the SI joint, and then the spine transfers forward through the body, and then the ribs are connected back to the spine. And therefore, at the moment when the inside hip is lowering, the rib cage at the inside is reflecting the same movement because it is connected. So therefore, if actually people are avoiding this rib cage rotation, it actually means that the people are avoiding a hip to drop, and when they're avoiding a hip to drop, they are avoiding a shoulder to get lifted.
Right.
So you hear often people explaining about give the boundary on the outside rein. And then if you need to bring the boundary from the outside rein, you actually avoid the lifting of the outside shoulder.
Got it.
Because you will start to hold back the downwards rotation on the inside rib cage. So the lowering of the inside hip. So for me, the rib cage rotation is the real clue towards actually having a horse moving in the hips correctly. So at the moment when we talk about the rib cage rotation, we need to see, of course, what kind of movements are there all in the rib cage. And first of all, you have a downwards rib cage rotation on the inside.
Yeah.
Then at the moment when the ribs are moving downwards at the inside, you will also see that the lower part of the rib cage is actually starting to move a little bit outwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you must just try to feel and sit on your horse, for example, and you must just follow the swinging of your horse.
Yep.
And try to keep a little bit more your heels close to the horse so that your heels can feel the movement from the lower part of the rib cage. Yep. And then you will actually feel that at the moment when the left hind leg, for example, comes forward, that your left heel will actually start to go a little bit more outwards.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah, so it's not only the up and down movement in the rib cage, it's also that the rib cage needs to be a little bit rotated outwards.
So let me get this straight. So if for example my left hind was dropping, then the rib cage would roll a little bit naturally, hopefully, down towards that left side, and then I would feel a little bit of like the base of that rib cage coming open. Am I in the right space with that?
Yes.
And then that would allow that right shoulder to start to lift.
Yes.
Okay. Totally. Yeah.
So that is then two parts of the movement. So we have one of it is the downwards movement on the inside rib cage. The second part is the outwards movement from the lower part of the rib cage.
Yeah.
And then the third part is actually that there is a forward motion in the rib cage towards the outside front leg.
Uh-huh.
So for me, my inside seat must have the idea about, or the inside rib cage must have the idea about a downwards, outwards, forward swinging towards the outside shoulder. So that is how I try to describe the ribcage rotation, because it is a three-dimension, and so many people are sitting on their horses in two dimensions, but it is a three-dimensional swinging through the body. For
sure. I just had this revelation too. So when we're in the inspiration of our ribs, so the thoracic inspiration phase, we have an external rotation of the ribs, we have a lifting, and we have what they call the bucket hand, bucket handle at the bottom, so that the ribs at the bottom sort of tend to flare out. So it almost sounds like there's like this reflection here when the hip comes down, that there's a reflection of that like inspiration experience within this thing that you're describing, which is really cool.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So that is for me the basic movement of actually a rib cage. And then people are sitting on their horses, and then I'm wondering, like, okay, their seat isn't following the movement of the horse. How is it possible that the horse can have a good movement?
Yeah.
Because the person is just blocking the horse.
Right.
So therefore it also means if you can't feel the ribcage rotation, so it means you can't tell me when the inside hind leg is in the air or one of the hind legs is in the air. There is a big issue, because you must be able to tell when a hind leg is in the air when you are able to follow the movement of a horse.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's something that's missed so often in our education around riding is something as simple as footfall.
Yeah.
I didn't learn it probably until about 6 years ago, and I still need to work at it. It's not natural. It's not supernatural to me, and I think for many people, it's hard enough even knowing when the front feet are landing.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out, okay, when are the back feet landing can be.
Yeah. And even that is something very interesting, because also here in Europe, often I have a chat with my pupil, and I'm asking, okay, tell me when the inside leg is in the air. And then they're telling me now. And then I'm wondering, like, that's not the time when the inside leg is in the air. And then I go a little bit deeper into the conversation, and then it was actually coming to the point that I'm referring to the hind leg. They are referring to the front leg.
Yep.
But my strangest thought is, okay, if a horse moves from behind all the way through the spine towards the front leg, reaching the head, it means that the movement of the hind leg must be felt into the seat. Because the movement of the front leg is happening in front of your seat. So why do people start with feeling a front leg?
Yeah.
If you can actually start to feel the front legs, it means your horse is falling on the front legs.
Yes.
So therefore, for me, it's a little bit of a strange thought about people first training them how to feel the front legs. Because if you feel a front leg, well, better get off your horse, because it's bad moving.
For sure, right?
So therefore, we really find it important that the first thing you need to learn to feel is the inside hind leg. The front legs are not so important, because when you feel them, it means the horse is falling on the front legs, because you can't feel them when a horse is ridden well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and like you were saying, when we have those heels down and we're on the front of our saddle, we're going to be right over those scapula, and of course we're feeling the movement of the front legs in that case, right? Yeah. So it's also sharing, yes, again, that there's some shifting that needs to maybe occur in there. Yeah.
Yeah, people actually just need to wonder themselves about, okay, what do I like to create? And then people often say a riding horse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, but then just use a little bit of a logic brain because it's not so complicated.
Yeah.
Because you can just experiment with your body. Okay, if I make this movement, what is the reflection in my body? So what does it tell me about my biomechanics? And the horse is actually reflecting quite a lot.
Right.
So often people are, in my idea, just following the instructions and they're not thinking anymore. And that's such a big thing. I always say, even when you're now listening to this podcast, is never believe anything what I say, because you don't need to believe me. You need to experiment. You need to discover it yourself, because it can be that I am telling you a lie. It's not my goal to tell you a lie, but you never know that I will say something that was maybe not true. So therefore, just never believe me. You must always make your own experiment, and then you can decide, okay, he's right or he's wrong.
Yeah.
Or maybe I still don't know. But don't really believe someone, because it doesn't mean when you find someone sympathetic that he's telling you good things.
Yeah.
So for me, it's so important is people need to use their brains. They have it for something. They don't have to sit on Facebook.
Right? Exactly.
So
And that was,
never believe something and try to experiment and try to go for it. So even after all these things we've said, just try to go out for yourself and try to see, is it true what he's talking about or not at all?
Totally. And see what works, because each horse is so individual in each partnership. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's so great to share. And
that even brings the same thing, like you said, there are so many different horses. And the strangest thing is also there are so many different kind of methods in between.
Completely. Yeah.
Like you have, of course, different kinds of horsemanship, but you have also different kinds of classical dressage and traditional dressage. But I'm wondering, we are still working with the same animal, a horse. Yeah. So how is it possible that there are so many different methods?
Yeah.
That's a big question for me.
It's a big question.
Yeah, my answer is because often certain methods are used for certain kind of horses. Like often one person is often training horses, for example, with a long back.
Yeah.
Or another person is often training Spanish horses. Or another person is often training warm bloods.
Yeah.
But, they are completely different. Of course, it doesn't mean when you have a warm blood that they're all the same, but just the idea. Yeah. So therefore, often one person is used to train a certain kind of horse. And then they start to develop a certain kind of technique for such a horse.
Yeah.
But therefore, it does not mean you can use this method for any horse. And that is something what I find important is when you are a very good horse trainer, you may never get fixed to a method, because a method only works for the horse in the theory book. Yeah. It never works for the horse you have yourself. So therefore, what a method must try to teach you is the understanding of different steps, the understanding of how a horse is responding, how a horse is moving, what you can train to change that movement. Mm-hmm. But you must always look at your horse every single day again. What is this horse telling me? Okay, it tells me this certain issue. Good. Mm-hmm. What kind of technique could I use to help this horse? So therefore, in the beginning, of course, a method is something like a fixed structure for a person to have something to hold on, to rely to. Yeah. But at the moment when you start to understand things, always my advice is never hold tight to a method, because a method is always wrong. You need to use the method that works for your horse. So your horse is the method, not the method itself. So that is also one of the things I think that is the complicated part of the academic art of riding. That is, there is no fixed structure. We have something like a red line, a red thread that we are following. Like the goal is that we go towards that kind of horse. And the idea is, for example, you start with standing and bending, and then you go to shoulder in and travers and things like that. But that is not the way how it goes in practice. Yeah. It will give you a basic idea, but maybe this horse first needs a little bit more hunches in. This horse maybe first needs to be a little bit more collected. Yeah. So there are so many different ways to reach the same goal, and that is one of the gifts from the academic art of riding. And at the same time, it is one of the parts why a lot of people are not feeling so sure about it, because there is no fixed structure. And that makes it more complicated for people because they need to learn how to use their weights.
Right. And hence, like, it's aptly named the art, right? Because it's like in an art form, it's not paint by numbers. It's like there's this sense of experiencing it and being creative and, trying out different things. So, yeah. Wow. And I think that for many people, that sense of that's what real relationship is with your horses as well, is being in this give and take of, what's working for you and for me and together, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And it can be, of course, that today it's a certain method, but maybe tomorrow not anymore.
Absolutely. It can shift for sure.
Yeah.
We were meant to get into a bunch of stuff about riding. We literally have like 10 minutes left. We'll have to do another one of these, Kenneth.
Oh yeah, I'm always happy to talk about horses.
But Kenneth wrote me this great. I asked what one of the things that was so important for him right now, and it was around this idea, kind of that of the upper body and the lower body. So maybe we can kind of like just start to chat about this, and then we promise we'll come back and do more at another time. But just sharing a little bit about in the rider what those two aspects do and how we sort of get it mixed up sometimes.
Yes. So actually, I like to give this example from a groundwork position, because then I think it's more clear for people.
Perfect.
And so first of all, why do we do groundwork? Well, we do groundwork to educate the horse to become a riding horse. So therefore, everything I do in the groundwork must be the same as in the riding. But that is often what I lack, because people are actually doing wrong things. And I will try to explain it. And what are actually people doing is they would like to have their horse mirroring themselves. So people want to have their horses mirroring them. So that often means is they will stop and they want to have the horse mirroring them and to stop too.
Okay.
So, but what is one of my problems is, okay, the person is stopping and the horse stops a few steps later too. First of all, my question is, okay, is this really mirroring? For me, this is more, the horse is a little bit late and he's just stopping by an accident. So my question is, what shall the horse mirror? So the people want to have the horse mirroring them when they stop, that the horse stops too. But then I imagine when I'm riding my horse, can I stop before the horse stops? That's impossible, because you will still sit on the back. Or I would like to see you sitting on the bum at the moment when you are stopping earlier than your horse does.
Right.
But no one ever does.
Yes.
So therefore I'm like, okay, but what's the point? So therefore I actually come to the point that I start to break down my body into pieces. My lower body, so my legs and my seat, actually when I would be riding, my feet on the ground when I'm on the ground, must always follow a horse. Because at the moment when your lower body of your horse is not following the horse anymore, you will actually discover that there are getting some contradictions. So on the groundwork, when you will stop more early than your horse does, you will get more and more backwards in your position. As far as I understand natural reactions from horses, it means you come into a driving position. When you come into a driving position and you want to ask your horse how to stop, that sounds a little bit contradiction for me. So this is for me already something I'm like, there is something wrong about this idea.
Right.
So therefore, my feet must always follow the horse. My seat must always follow the horse. Something that I could ask a question with is, okay, what does the horse do in nature from reflection? And in nature, the horses are reflecting by their point of gravity. At the moment when one horse is changing their point of gravity towards another horse, the other horse starts to move. So actually, it is very natural for a horse how to reflect the point of gravity, not how to reflect your legs. So for me, it's something completely different. So therefore, I try to go in the groundwork as well as in the riding. My upper body is the one asking questions, asking the horse, follow me, my lower body is asking the horse, is actually giving me the following of the horse. So my lower body must always follow the horse. I do not want to sit against the horse. My upper body starts to ask it questions to change the movement, but never sit against horses. Because at the moment when you sit against, you're not in connection anymore, and you're not following the horse anymore, and the horse is not following you anymore. So for me, it's the lower body that is following the horse. It's the upper body asking questions.
Wow. Wow. And I've been totally guilty of being that person that's like, stop when I stop.
Yeah, of course, that's an end product.
And my mare's like, meh. So yeah, I've got a lot to chew on from this, and I'm sure our listeners are the same, where they're out there licking and chewing and having, a bit of a moment processing all of this. I want to come back to all of that. I'm cognizant of the time, and I know there's so much more around that idea of the independent aids as well. And I'd love to talk more about the seat, and also even just, breaking up the aids of the upper leg and the lower leg, things like that. I wish we had more time. There's so much to talk about. Yes, I'm just aware.
Next time we need to make a topic.
We're going to have to come back. I hope you're okay with that.
Oh, I'm totally fine. I love to talk.
Good.
About horses.
Yeah. This has been really, really awesome. I've learned so much. I hope everyone out there listening is feeling the same. It just gave me some beautiful pictures to work with, and it's just really, really helpful to see things in that different light. Kenneth, how do people get in touch with you?
How do people get in touch with me?
Yeah.
There is Facebook is a very famous tool to use. So you can always find me just on Facebook. You can go to my personal Facebook or my Facebook page. There is also a website, but there is only one in Dutch at this moment. So that's a little bit
tricky for some people.
Yeah. So therefore, Facebook is the best option. You can always send it down there. There will come an English website soon, I hope. And then they can, of course, also always find me in Canada again.
Yes, and I wanted to chat about that. So Kenneth is coming back to Canada. You've got 2 dates booked right now. So when are you back?
Good. So, normally I come always 3 times a year in Canada. But as you said, I went already once this year. So there was only 2 times ahead. So the time that I will come again is I will start to teach the clinic from 6th until 12th June at Heather Nelson's place.
That's in Duncan at Heather's place.
At Heather's place.
Okay.
So if you would like to have more information, Heather can always help you because she's organizing and she's hosting.
Perfect. So for everybody out there, it's Heather Nelson. So Heather Nelson Liberty Training, I think, is her website. So you can chat
something like that. Yeah. And then we have even the 8th of June, we have an open day at her place. Great.
What does that mean?
It must be the 8th or the 9th. Maybe she was changing something, so let's not take it too seriously. So what is actually the whole point about that day is actually to get people to know about our work. What is the academic art of riding? What do we find important? So there will be many different topics like theory topics, examples, header training, the horses I'm teaching, giving lectures. So there will be many things to explore. Perfect. So I would say everybody join. I think it's even for free. At least now it is.
Okay, everybody listening. So if you're on Vancouver Island, this is a date to put in your book. And
yes, and even if you need to book a flight, it's the day to book your flight.
Awesome. I will make sure to put it up on the podcast, so on the .ca website as well. I'll talk to Heather and get some dates.
Yes, she will be very glad about it. So then 15 and 16 June, I'm in Salt Spring.
Perfect.
And then I know we are discussing something about the 17th of June in Gabriel Island.
Yeah, great.
So that is the June. Then I look further in my schedule, and the next dates are in October again.
Yep.
And we have 3 until 8th of October that I will be at Heather Nelson's again.
Yeah.
And then 12 until 13 at Salt Spring. And maybe we will still add some more things, but until now, this is what's in the schedule.
Awesome. That's great. And can people come and, if they felt like coming to Europe, can they come and work with you as well?
They're always welcome at my place. I'm always welcome
Awesome.
to invite everybody and to show them stuff and to train them things and to get
Okay.
inspired. And because sometimes, of course, one of the issues is when I go to Canada, they're not able to see my horses.
Yeah, totally.
So I
Totally.
can't give them a good example how I like to have it.
Yeah.
So therefore,
Yeah.
sometimes coming to Europe is a good investment too.
I know. I definitely am going to do that in the next couple of years. So yeah.
That's a deal.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. Great,
Bye-bye.
great. That's super helpful. Yeah, for anybody here on the West Coast, definitely go check it out. I've attended a few of the times with the theory sessions, and they're super informative. So even if you just go as an auditor, it's really worth your time.
Theory is something that I really enjoy.
Totally, it's great. And Kenneth, any favorite resources that you would like to share with everybody?
Yeah, well, there are many resources. I must admit, I'm not such a reader myself. I do not have so much time to read books. I like to train horses.
Yeah.
But there are, of course, the books from the Academic Art of Riding themselves.
Okay.
There are many of them, and you will search for them. There's even a bookazine where they are actually making a 12-part edition. So there are only 3 editions out now. So every year now they will add the next edition. So the first part was relationship to the horse.
Yeah.
The basic fundamental. The second part of it was, I think, groundwork. The third part is lunging. So these are the 3 books that are out already.
Fantastic.
The fourth part will be standing and bending, as far as I remember. So then we will add until 12 editions, so that you can have actually a very nice collection from how to educate the horse.
Beautiful.
So that is one of the books I could also recommend. And there is also another book that I really like to read about the biomechanics. And it is actually a book from Gert Hirschman. Don't shoot me when I said it in the wrong way. And he has a book, Collection or Contortion.
Oh, I've heard about this one. Okay.
Yeah, so maybe I said something wrong about the book, but at least if you can't find it, send me a message. I will help you.
Perfect.
I find it a very good book. I do not say I always agree with everything, but that's not important.
Yeah.
There are so many good things and so many good pictures that you really get a good,
Fantastic. That's great. I've heard about it a few times. I think I need to get that one on order for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Okay. Awesome.
I read myself.
There's so many things, but those are a really great place for people to start.
Yeah.
So much appreciated.
And therefore YouTube is also a very big resource.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw that there's some videos of you up there, and so I'll post a few on the Whole Horse .ca where the podcast will be located. So if anybody wants resources, please go there. It'll be under episode 27. So enjoy. All right.
Okay,
Finishing up here. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you, Alexa. It was very nice to talk to you.
It's so fun. We'll do it again. Don't worry, everybody. We'll keep going with this. We really appreciate all of you coming on, spending time, taking that time out of your day, and we hope you learned something. I know I sure did. And I'll be back soon with another podcast, and looking forward to seeing you then. Okay, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye.